I'll start by creating a new web project. And this will be running on Glassfish 4. And it will contain 3 classes. A servlet that will be in this package, and will only have a doGet method for the purpose of this tutorial. And the second class will be a server endpoint. So I will annotate it as a server endpoint, and it will have a URI template path, and this will be the configurator class which I will be creating. So I'll make it extend, and I'll import javax.websocket.server. Now here, to pick up this path parameter, I'll be doing that in the handleOpen method, which will be called when the connection is established. So I'll annotate it with the onOpen. Now going to the servlet, I will have this private method, a generate username page that will generate an HTML page which would look something like this. So we would have a room selection combo box and a username entry. So the user can either select one of the pre-existing rooms or create a new room and provide a room name for that new room, and also provide the username. And this room name, either coming from here or coming from one of those 3, will be what's the value of this chat room, so the path parameter here. So this will be the HTML that will be generated by this method. And this method will be called from the doGet method. So let me pick up a print writer from the HTTP servlet response. Now, before continuing the coding, I have the complete application running from a different server, and I want to show what is passed back to the servlet. So let's say before, and we submit. So we have a room select and a new room name and a username that are passed. So here I can pick up the username in the doGet method, and I need a method that generates this page from the servlet. I'll have this method generate the chat room page, and here if the username is different than null, then I'll go ahead and call the generate chat room page. Otherwise I will be calling the generate username page. And let's also set the content type to be text slash HTML for the HTTP servlet response. And I will be storing the username in the HTTP session. So here in this method I'm passing the username, and I'll pick up an HTTP session, and do session.set attribute for the username. And the room name I will be picking up from here, from the room select. So I will do request.get parameter room select for the room name. And if the user selected the new room option, then I need to pick up the room name from here. So I'll do this. If room name is different than null and room name is equals to the new room option, then I'll set the room name to be request.get parameter new room name. The remaining part is the HTML and JavaScript code that would generate this screen. So this code, and I want to access it without a servlet name here. So let's go here and remove this. And this basically finishes the servlet. Next, let's go to the chat room server configurator. Now here I will override the modify handshake method, and this will be all what I will be doing here. So I'll do request.get HTTP session and cast that to HTTP session, and then on this HTTP session instance I'll call get attribute username, and I will cast that to a string and store it in the user property for the server endpoint config instance. So I'll do a put here for the username. And next, let's go to the server endpoint. Now here we will have a map that contains names of each chat room, and with each name it has a set of users in that chat room. And I will have a get chat room method that returns a set of sessions representing various users associated with a chat room. So initially I'll try to get the chat room from this map. So chatrooms.get, and pass it the chat room name, and if that chat room is null, I'll go ahead and create a new one and put it in the map, and then return it. Now here in this method, I'll go ahead and pick up the username from the endpoint config instance, so essentially from here that we stored here. And I'll store that username in the session user properties, so session.getUserProperties.put. I'll also store the chat room name in that session user properties also. And next I'll pick up the set of chat room users associated with this chat room name, and I will add this session to that set, and I'll have a method annotated with the onError annotation, and another method annotated with the onClose annotation. So here what I will do is to pick up the chat room name from the user properties of the session that we stored over here, and use that name to pick up a set of sessions, so the chat room users, and then remove that session from the set of sessions associated with this chat room. And we'll also have a method annotated with the onMessage annotation, and here I'll pick up the username and the chat room name from the user session, from this session, and I'll pick up the set of users in that chat room. And before continuing, I need this method build JSON data that takes in a username and a message, and returns a JSON string. To be passed back to the client. Now, so coming back to the handle message method, I'll be using this build JSON data method, and also I'm using Java 8 here. So I'll do chat room users dot stream dot for each user session in that chat room, I'll send text. So build JSON data passing in the username and the message. and x.get basic remote. Next, let's go ahead and test run this application. Okay, so I'll open up four Firefox browsers. And let's say user 1 and user 2, and let's create a new room here, so call it room 4, and let's say those two users, user 3 and user 4, want to use room 4 to communicate, and user 1 and user 2 will use room 1. So next, let me go ahead and test run the same application on Tomcat 8. So I'll go ahead and create a new project. And this will be running on Tomcat 8. And I'll copy this package and drop it here. And let's go to the previous project I've done, Tomcat, and I downloaded JSON. So I'll copy this jar and drop it here. Okay. Next, let me go ahead and try to run it. So let me copy this and reopen the 4 browsers I had. Let's do the same thing. So user 01 and user 02 will use let's say room 2 to communicate, and user 03 and user 04 will use room 5 to communicate.